Good morning, Hank. It's Tuesday.
Why is this fella given to me by a nerd fighter in Germany doing his happy dance? Because Amazon.com just named The Fault in Our Stars one of the 10 best books of 2012. I don't mean books for teenagers, I mean overall books. Like I'm right behind Dave Eggers and inexplicably ahead of Junot Diaz. Hank, as a novelist, I really believe in the power of the precisely chosen word, so all I can say about this news is Schmergerberg!
Today we have a special treat. John Green, author of this month's book selections, is joining us for a new episode of Psychology 2.0.
Right, there we go.
Hey guys, it's Carl. As you know, me and Karen have read two of Green's books, Looking for Alaska and Abundance of Catherines. In this episode, we will be discussing what influenced John Green's works.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on the show.
So John, before we get into discussing, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Okay, well, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, with my parents and brother Hank, who's my business partner and pretty good friend. So yeah, when I was a teen, we moved from Birmingham, however, to Orlando, Florida. After moving to Orlando, I wasn't really content with what was happening in school, so I decided to attend Indian Springs High, which was a boarding school in Birmingham, Alabama. After graduation, I attended Keystone College, where I received a dual degree in religious studies and English. And after that, I went on to work at a chaplain for a hospital for a little bit. But due to personal issues, I decided to switch my line of work from working as a chaplain to publishing, which I continued to do until my second book was published.
Wow, that sounds like you have an amazing life. Have you always been so interested in reading and literature?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Growing up, I was bullied a little bit in school. While I had a fantastic home life, it was a very rich and warm environment. I always found solace in words because of that bullying going on.
Ah, I see. So when reading Looking for Alaska, I found the characters Pudge and Alaska to be quite fascinating. I was wondering if any of their experiments might have your own.
Oh, totally. I mean, in the novel, I base some of the hijinks, some of their hijinks on my experiences at Indian Springs High School, but also in writing their behaviors. Both Pudge and Alaska are very lonely people, I guess. They're at this boarding school looking for something more. So, yeah, their behaviors kind of mirrored my own when I was going through my periods of depression.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so when I was about 24, I was working as a publisher, and, you know, my girlfriend had just left me, and I just got really depressed, and although I'd been battling depression for a while before that, it had never gotten that bad, so I decided to take leave of absence from work, and I spent about a month or so at home, just getting daily intensive therapy, and my medications got adjusted, and I was fine, and I continued to be fine, but just drawing and reflecting on that period of my life and the events that led up to it, that just really helped me kind of find a muse for my work, especially because I was writing about young adults, and I was pretty young when I was experiencing all this.
I know that I can see some of the things that you wrote relates to my work in the field of psychology. For example, I worked on how depressed and anxious individuals tend to have certain neurotic needs.
Really? Go on.
Well, for example, I've written a need for a romantic partner. Colonial could be seen as having a neurotic need for a romantic partner, as his relationship with his girlfriend Sarah is unstable at best. He recognizes this fact yet refuses to end the relationship with her.
I mean, I see your point, but I guess some of that could be attributed to the fact that they're, 16, 17? They're young, they're in love. It could be follies of youth.
Yeah, now that Karen mentions it, looking back at my work, I can see some parallels of between the two. For example, the characters in Pudge fall right into my idea of the master motivator. By seeking the great, perhaps, he is going to boarding school, he is self-actualizing and trying to be the best for himself.
Yeah, no, I see that.
Yeah, but you see, once he goes to school, he is not. He flips and is not trying to become so self-motivated.
Well, I mean, I think one could also argue that the force behind him wanting to excel in Culver Creek was the fact that he was so miserable at his old high school. Once he gets to Culver Creek and finds a group of unstable, albeit available friends, he, in essence, begins to have confidence in himself, and that confidence also allows him to drop the facade that he has to be this perfect student.
Right, and that goes back to the statement about the self-esteem. Self-esteem is important to us with the fact that it goes to doing good or bad. So if you have more self-esteem, you're less likely to do bad things as like consume alcohol or smoke cigarettes, and that leads to chain smoking, and which is bad for us. As Alaska, Pudge and the colony all chain smoke and drink, which is an example of the self-esteem.
Yeah. Just looking at their behaviors though, while one in your field of work could argue that because they don't have high self-esteem, they're not taking care of their bodies, I don't know, at least I chalk it up to just reckless teens doing reckless things, not understanding consequences or mortality or anything like that.
Would you say that Pudge restricts his life to narrow borders, that he keeps himself closed off? Can you find me a passage in Looking for Alaska, please?
Yeah, sure. I'll look. Actually, okay, yeah, I have one. So just a little context. This is on page 219 of my book, Looking for Alaska. And in this passage, the character Pudge is writing a reflective essay on his time at Culver Creek. Before I got here, I thought for a long time that the way out of the labyrinth was pretend it didn't exist. To build a small, self-sufficient world in the back corner of an endless maze to pretend that I was not lost, but home. But that only led to a lonely life accompanied only by last words of the already dead. So I came looking for a great perhaps, for real friends, and more than a minor life. In this passage, Pudge is, of course, referring to the last words of the poet Francis Rabelais, who, dying, he declares, I go to seek great perhaps. Pudge is very inspired by these words, and it's that motivates him to go to this boarding school and seek greatness. And the labyrinth he was referring to also draws back to last words, this time the last words of Simon Bolivar, who, after being shot, he exclaims, how will we ever make it out of this labyrinth alive? And that's how Pudge tends to view his life. He sees it as a complex maze in which he needs to find a corner and build his life and not explore any of the horrors that could be in the twists and turns.
Awesome, very interesting. No better way to hear from the author himself. Now, jumping ahead, we're going to look at Mr. Green's other book called Abundance of Catherine. And in this book, there are more connections that I've made between our works.
Go on, I see.
My idea of personality and congruity, in which schism between the real and ideal self, is highly presented in this work, especially in regards to Colin.
Ooh, go on.
He is basically torn up between the person he is and the person he wants to be. He sees himself as a washed-up child prodigy. All he wants to be is a genius. He is working so hard at becoming something he probably won't be.
True, but couldn't that also be seen as Colin being young and naive? I mean, little kids, and teenagers especially, have this grandiose ideas of themselves. I don't know, when I wrote it, I think I was just drawing from remembering that time and remembering the feeling of simultaneously being knocked down by life and being told I could be whatever I want. It's an interesting juxtaposition.
It's a very unique insight, you know?
I find that very interesting also. Colin also has a very high need for personal achievement. He literally asks his close friend and confidant, what is the point of being alive if you at least try to do something remarkable? It's crazy about the amount of pressure that he puts on himself. How did you bring about that?
I mean, it's true that he does put a great deal of pressure on himself, but again, I think that does go back to the just how naive the protagonist Colin is. He formerly was considered a child prodigy when it came to words and math, and now he's about to go into college and he's washed up. He's just recovering from a bad breakup, and he makes that statement in a time of desperation. He makes that statement in a time of desperation to prove himself, you know? So by stating he wants to do something remarkable with his life, I think it's, again, this interesting juxtaposition between being a naive child whose idea of self is inflated and being a scared young man.
Very different. Very different of you like that.
Thank you, Will. I read the book.
Indeed. Okay, that's all the time we have for this episode. Join us next time when we discuss Pride and Prejudice and zombies with an actual zombie extra from The Walking Dead.
Sounds amazing. Until next time, I'm Carl Rogers.
And I'm Karen Horney. Thank you for enjoying this episode.
Nichts ist mehr, wie's früher einmal war. Dumme Schatten, graue Diener, die Welt zerbricht ins Nichts.
Wenn wir das hier überstanden haben, dann wird es nicht mehr so sein, wie es war.
Niemand, der noch spricht. Nichts ist mehr, wie's früher einmal war. Willkommen im Zombieland, vom Paradies verbannt. Mit und als Mann.
Shit, die haben sich mit den Falschen angelegt.
Und als Mann. Willkommen im Zombieland. Nirgends ist es sicher. Die Free-TV-Premiere der 4. Staffel The Walking Dead. Ab 27. Oktober um 23:15 Uhr bei RTL 2.